But one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen that good part which will not be taken away from her. Now, it becomes apparent in the story that Martha is the head of the household. Do you notice that? This is her house that Jesus is coming to. Notice there in the verse 38, and it says, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. This is her house. Now, it could perhaps be assumed, now there's assumption here. There's not a whole lot of information that we get in regards to who Martha is and who Mary is, to tell you the truth. They are mentioned actually only in about 3 places, Mary and Martha. Okay, 3 places. This is one of them. Now, we could assume, okay, that Martha was a widow, which is why she is given the title of head of household. But let's put this by the wayside for a moment. First century culture expects this of a woman. You see, this was a male-dominated society, and it was usually the practice for the men to be in the living room, if you will, talking, while the women were in the background preparing the meal. The picture that we see, if we are looking at this from first century eyes, would see Martha fulfilling her duty, and we would be quick to castigate Mary for not fulfilling her duty. You see, Martha was duty-bound. She was duty-bound. This is an area that has had me puzzled over the years. If we were to place Mary and Martha side by side, and we were to simply compare them, Mary and Martha, comparing the two, what we often do is we see Mary as good and Martha as bad. Okay? This has been our approach looking at it from 21st century eyes. Okay? Now, the thing is that as we are to, if we were to do the same thing through first century eyes, ultimately the conclusion that we would come to would be the reverse. Martha good and Mary bad. Okay? She's got a duty, she's not fulfilling it, Mary. Martha is. Now, again, I do believe that this is a very shallow way of looking at the story. And again, what we have to do is begin to look at it a bit more closely and see what was actually intended here in this text. Martha looked and said to herself, as any of us would have done, what a privilege to have Jesus Christ coming and visiting with us in my home. Can you imagine that? Jesus is coming over. Now, most of us have entertained people and so on. And when somebody comes over, you've invited them over for dinner, of course, you prepare the very best. You want to be sure that the table settings are out. You want to be sure that dishes are clean. You want to be sure the house is clean. You want to be sure that you prepare the very best meal possible so that they would be filled and satisfied and go home knowing that they had a fantastic meal at your house. This is what we do. We want to give of our best. We want to offer our best when somebody comes over. And I believe that this is what was going on with Martha, that she said to herself, what a privilege to prepare a meal for the master. Mary, on the other hand, would have said, what a privilege to sit at the feet of Jesus. Now, let me ask you a question. Is what Martha is doing bad? Is it bad? No. Is what Mary is doing bad? No. Is one right and the other wrong? No. You see, duty and devotion are both necessary. Duty and devotion, both absolutely important, both necessary. So what's the problem? Notice verse 40 with me again. Notice verse 40. And verse 40 says, "But Martha was distracted with much serving." Now, it says that Martha was distracted. Now, the word translated as distracted has a deeper meaning in the Greek than simply distracted as we understand it or as we know it. The word has a meaning of being dragged away. Okay? So it's almost like you're here, and think about it like this, because I've done this many times with particularly my son. Okay, he's here, he's playing. Okay, he's playing, but I want him to do something else. So I called him, he doesn't come. So what do? I go to him, and I grab him by the arm, and I say, "Let's go." And what is he doing? He's pulling, he's with his toys. He's like, no. This is being dragged away. So almost to the point where when you're distracted, you would rather be there, you long to be there, but you are distracted with much work. Okay, so you are being pulled away. In other words, Martha wants to be there, but her distraction is taking her to serve, and with much work, as the scriptures say. So the implication is that Martha wanted to hear Jesus herself. She wanted to be there with Jesus, listening to his words. She wanted to be seated at the feet of Jesus too, but she was pulled away by her sense of duty. Okay? Many of you know what that's like. You have a sense of duty, and you are that pull is strong. The pull is strong. But you want to be somewhere else or doing something else. And that pull, in other words, you are being distracted, much like Martha was being distracted. And so she was being pulled away by her sense of duty. Worrying about the meal has robbed her of the joy of service to the Lord. Now think about this. Think about that statement. Being distracted with duty robbed her of the joy of service to the Lord. Now to think that Martha had the Master, the Son of God, in her home. And to think that just like any one of us would be so excited to have somebody like that as our special guest. And as we would prepare the meal and prepare the house and so on, the joy was being sucked out of her because she wanted to be there. And what made it worse was that Mary was there and she was not. You see, and oftentimes I think about this, and that is that we have very dutiful people here in our congregation. Very committed individuals. In other words, we have people that are pulled by a sense of duty. You accepted the call of deacon, and therefore I will serve till I am bloody knuckles, making sure that the job gets done. My duty as deaconess, okay, and it's very easy to apply this to the ladies, okay, in this particular sense, because we see a lot of similarities. When we have potluck, the ladies are out there in the kitchen and they're preparing, and you're there because of a sense of duty, but you long to be in here, don't you, ladies? And so that joy then becomes robbed. Because now I'm doing things because I know I need to do them, but yet I'm missing out on what I really want to experience. This is what's going on with Martha. Now listen to that again. Worrying about the meal has robbed her of the joy of her service to the Lord. Worrying about the meal, her duty, has robbed her of the joy of her service to the Lord. How many of us have been robbed of the joy of their service to the Lord? me confess to you, brothers and sisters, as a pastor, I am in love with Martha. I am in love with Martha. I have a love affair with Martha. You see, Martha is who we pastors dream about. Martha is who we have upon our minds. Martha is the one that will volunteer to lead out in Sabbath school. She is the one that steps up during VBS time and runs the show. Martha is the one that comes to me and says, Pastor, I will set up the tables. I will prepare the meal. I will do the decorations. I will watch the children during the program. I will organize this. I will lead that. Martha, Martha, oh, how I love you. Let me count the ways. My dream, let me tell you what my dream is. My dream is to have a church filled with Marthas. But brothers and sisters, there is more to the problem of being pulled by your sense of duty. The second problem that we find is that if we are drawn by our sense of duty, then we begin to be consumed by what others are doing or not doing. Do you notice that Jesus does not criticize Mary or Martha when you think about it? Jesus does not criticize Martha for what she is doing, but he is concerned about what, but you see, she is concerned about what Mary is not doing, right? So Jesus doesn't get on her. Jesus doesn't criticize her because she is doing what she thinks she's supposed to be doing, and Mary is not doing it. Okay? Now, Jesus doesn't necessarily criticize, because again, I believe that Jesus recognizes the sense of duty and the sense of devotion. Okay? The sense of duty being important, the sense of devotion, of course, being important just as much, if not more. But again, Jesus does not criticize. Martha wrongly judged Mary's inaction and worries too much about what others are doing or what others are not doing. And you know what? We have a big problem with this, don't we? Whether we're going to say it out loud or not, and I'm talking within the context of church. Now, if it were at home, oh boy, let me tell you, it's easy to say. Oh, well, I'm doing all of this, and look at what my brother's doing. He's doing nothing. He's just sitting there. I'm doing all the work. We do that. I've done it. We do it at home. You know, and the thing is that when it comes to church, we may not necessarily say it, but we sure think it. We sure think it. And we say, I'm doing all of this, but yet so-and-so or such and such is not doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we begin to, whenever we this problem of this sense of duty, that as we're pulled by that sense of duty and robbed of the joy, again, when we're robbed of the joy, the other problem is that we're looking at everybody else and what they're doing, what they're not doing. This is what Martha was doing. Too many times we look at what someone else is or isn't doing, and don't get me wrong, this message is not excusing inaction, and neither is Jesus. But according to Jesus, Mary chose what was needed. Mary chose what was needed. The third problem that we find is our accusation against God. So not only are we robbed, these are, again, the problems when we get that sense of duty and it pulls us and we become distracted by it. that number one, that we are robbed of the sense of joy, right? We're robbed of the sense of joy of service for the Lord. And then number two, we begin to look at others and begin to say, well, why aren't you doing this? Or why aren't you doing that? Or why aren't they doing this? I'm doing all of it and nobody else is helping. But the third problem is that we begin to accuse God. We begin to look at God and blame God. Let's look at verse 40 again. It says, but Martha was distracted with much serving, and she approached him and said, Lord, do you not care? Whoa. Do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore tell her to help me. And she's blaming God, or accusing God of not caring. Not caring, and therefore holding Mary to her sense of duty. And so we see what's happening here. So several problems. The joy has been sucked out. She's now looking at Mary, at what she is doing and what she isn't doing. And then we find the third problem, that she then looks to God and say, maybe it's you that doesn't care. It's you that doesn't care. You're not saying anything to Mary. You know that she ought to be helping me, but she isn't, and she's there just wasting time. Don't you care, Lord? Don't you want to eat? In Martha's appeal, not only did she blame Mary for inaction, but she indirectly accused Jesus of not caring about the situation and not intending to do anything about it. Jesus, you care more about Mary listening to you than have her help in preparing the meal. In times of prayer, it has often been asked, God, why are you not raising up laborers? Do you not care about those that are laboring alone? Brothers and sisters, I want to tell you, you perhaps have heard it and you understand it, that the reality is, whether it's in church or outside of church or whatever it might be, that there's that 80-20 rule, right? That you have 20% of the people doing 80% of the work. It is those 20% of the people that are becoming distracted. It is those 20% of the people that are beginning to recognize that they are being robbed of the joy of the service to their God. And they're tired, they're getting burnt out. And they're saying, I'm doing this alone. I need some help. I need somebody else to come and step in. I need an assistant. I need a team. I need a group of people. Come. And they're being robbed of that joy. And then you have, not only are they being robbed of that joy, but they're beginning to look at others and seeing what others are doing, what others aren't doing. There's a problem with that. And then you've got that third problem where they're beginning to accuse God. And that accusation against God. Do you not care, Lord, that I'm doing this all by myself? We have that struggle. And brothers and sisters, it exists here. It exists outside. It's just human nature, unfortunately. And you know what? For those 80%, oh, how nice life is. I can just come, sit back, relax, and the work is being done all around me. That's not necessarily a good thing either. But see, that then is another sermon. Because that's inaction. It may not necessarily be simply that you're spending time in devotion, but it's more inaction. Now, brothers and sisters, I have another confession, okay, this morning, and that is that I am Martha. I am Martha. Some of you might be able to say, I am Martha. This is almost like an AA meeting, you know, and where we come together and we all stand up and, you know, and say, I'm Martha. I am a Martha. And, I'm here before you confessing that I am a Martha myself. I am a Martha. And as I've been preparing this message, as I have prepared this message, I think about my own love affair with Martha. Now, it drew me to the consequences, to the love affairs that occur within the context of marriages. One of the biggest consequences is that of the husband and wife growing apart when there is a love affair. Okay? The husband and wife growing apart. The relationship becomes strained. There is a lack of intimacy, and more they spend less and less time with each other. Brothers and sisters, this is exactly what a love affair with Martha does. This is exactly what a love affair with Martha does. You see, what happens is I need to have that love affair with Jesus Christ. And if my love affair is with Martha, then what's going to happen is if I'm made the decision already in times past to be married to Jesus, then what happens is I have this love affair with Martha, and what's happening now? Now my relationship with Jesus is becoming strained. Now there's a lack of intimacy. There is a growing apart. Brothers and sisters, the same consequences that we find in a marriage when there is a love affair introduced is the same type of consequence that we find in a relationship with Jesus. We spend less and less time with Jesus Christ. We are called by our sense of duty. And let me tell you, I understand this. I understand it very well. And that is that as you are being tugged by that sense of duty, there are times when you will sit down to simply just read and study and have that personal devotion, and all of a sudden a sense of guilt begins to creep into your heart. Have you ever felt that? I have. That I should not be doing this. I should be out there helping so-and-so. Or I should be doing that. This needs to be done. And I'm sitting here with the appearance of doing nothing. Brothers and sisters, love affairs with Martha are dangerous. But let me tell you, I love Martha. Drawn by a sense of duty and service, becoming more and more busy, time with God becomes lessened. The one I am married to, Jesus Christ. Often when things get busy, the first thing to go is time with the Lord. The sense of being pulled away or dragged away is experienced. Notice verse 42. This is Jesus. But one thing is needed, he's speaking to Martha. And Mary has chosen that good part which will not be taken away from her. Martha was diligent. Martha was prompt. She was organized. She was energetic. But she lacked the calm, devotional spirit of her sister. Mary had learned a valuable lesson that Martha still needed to learn. Brothers and sisters, this is what we fail to understand. A spirit of joyful service comes as a result of spending time with God. Do you get that? The spirit of joyful service comes as a result of time spent with God. As I spend that time with God and my intimacy begins to grow and my nearness to Him and that love begins to just blossom in incredible and powerful ways, then when I begin to serve, just like when you fall in love with your spouse or have that love for your children, I will do anything for you because I love you. Brothers and sisters, this is what has to happen in our own personal lives when it comes to our relationship with Jesus Christ. You see, it ought to be devotion, then duty. Not duty, then back to devotion when I can fit it in. It's devotion, spending that time with God, developing that intimacy with Him to the point where then I can say, Jesus, it is such a joy to serve you. Whatever you call me to do, I will do it with joy upon my heart, because it is what you have asked me and what you have called me to do. If that is reversed, then service is done out of a sense of duty and responsibility rather than the natural response to my communion with Him. It will lead to focusing upon what others are or are not doing, and then blaming God for not caring about the work that is being done. And then you know what follows? Burnout. Burnout follows. Brothers and sisters, as I have been a Martha for some time, I so badly want to be a Mary. I want to be a Mary. I need to be a Mary. I need to sit at the feet of Jesus and be fed by Him. I want Him in my marriage to Him, my love relationship with Him. I want Him to speak to me and tell me that He loves me. I long for His sweet voice to fill my ears and yearn for Him to fill my heart. This one thing is needed in my life. With accountability, brothers and sisters, I am returning to the feet of Jesus and being refreshed in a tremendous way. Brothers and sisters, I long to be the leader that God has called me to be and the pastor that you need. Pray for me, brothers and sisters. Pray for me. But brothers and sisters, this message is not simply for me. I, with fervent passion, urge you to be a Mary. Rediscover your joy in serving the Lord. Sit at His feet. If you don't have a prayer partner, get one. Let's make this place a house of prayer. Make your homes of prayer. Pray for the outpouring of the Holy Spirit in your life, your home, your church, your community. Jesus is coming, and I want to be ready, don't you? But brothers and sisters, it is not enough for me to just be ready. I want to help you be ready for the kingdom. I want my family there with me. I want you there with me. And I believe with all my heart that God is on the verge of doing something here in this church and in this community. I believe it, brothers and sisters. I want you to believe it with me. He is already starting that. Open your eyes to the miracles being performed even now. God is at work in our midst. Lives are being changed all around us, here in this place. I pray that you are not blinded to the activity of God working here around you. Use your influence to encourage someone next to you. Utilize your gifts to minister to someone today. God will use you to bring about those miracles. I can't wait for what more is in store. There's an ancient Scottish legend. It's merely a legend, and it is told in which a poor boy who was tending some sheep on the mountainside saw at his feet a beautiful flower. It was so beautiful, one that he had never seen before, that he could not resist but picking it up. And as he did so, he heard a sound. Looking up, he saw the mountain before him open up, revealing a cavern filled with precious gems and metals. He walked into the cavern and laid down the flower and began to gather all the gold and all the silver and all the precious gems that he could carry. And when he could carry no more, he heard a voice as he turned to leave. He says, and it said, "Don't forget the best." So he turned again and he gathered more stuff into his arms. And as he left the cavern, the mountainside closed up behind him. All that he carried turned to dust. And the voice said, "You forgot the best. For the flower is the key to the vault of the mountain." Now I share that because here's the thing. There is a treasure that has been laid before us. There is a treasure that is so valuable. There is a treasure that is so vast. It is so large, so incredible. A treasure that you've never understood or seen before. But brothers and sisters, if you want joy, if you want peace, if you want passion, fall in love with Him again. Fall in love with Him again. Don't forget the key to the vault of the treasure. And the key to the vault of the treasure is found in spending time with Jesus. Don't forget the best.